Nathan, I just turned on the recording.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. And if we have 6 of us, when you want to begin, just go ahead. And then when you want me to walk through the slides, just say next slide, please. Okay.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you. If you want, you can actually go ahead and go to the next slide. That would be great. And then we'll just give it another minute or two to let people join in here. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for everyone who's joined. We will be starting here momentarily. We're going to let a few more people join the session. So we'll go ahead and start here in just another minute or two. I appreciate it. Okay, seeing that it's just about 2:32, I will go ahead and we'll go ahead and start today's session. Greg, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide, that'd be great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. This is our first 2021 session for the Conversations with Colleagues as part of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Data Subcommittee. Essentially, this session or webinar is meant to give everybody a chance to talk with one another, talk about any updates or research, anything that's interesting that they may want to discuss in a bit of a more informal setting. And today specifically, we're going to be talking about the recent TRB annual meeting, if there were any particular interesting posters, or whether there was a session or some research that you wanted to follow up with people on or ask questions. In addition, we'll also be talking about just everybody themselves, whether there were any particular updates in their own research, what if there's anything interesting that they've seen in regards to data lately, or in just general updates to give to one another and just check in. So Greg, if you can go to the next slide, please. So just as a bit of a housekeeping, we have about 17 people on right now. In a minute, we'll do a quick round of introductions. You can just go on and say hello, say your name, where you're from. We have a pretty small group, so I think it would be a good chance for everybody just to introduce themselves here in a minute. But we will go ahead and we'll do that in alphabetically as well. But after that, when you're not talking, just go ahead and keep yourself muted. That way we can avoid any potential interruptions or feedback. Everyone is so far so good, so I appreciate that. So I believe we have a participant list here, so I'm just going to go down the list. I'll start with myself. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Nathan Hicks. I'm a transportation planner with CDM Smith, and I'm one of the organizers for the Conversations with Colleagues as part of all of this. I appreciate you being here today. Greg?
My name is Greg Lindsay. I'm on the faculty at the University of Minnesota, the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and I've been on the data committee for a number of years. I work with monitoring and modeling active travel.
Great, thank you. Andreas?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andreas Kraus. I am with Caltrans District 1, and this is my first interaction with the TRB group. So thanks for the invite.
No problem. Thank you for joining. All right, next is Ashley Mason.
Hi, I'm Ashley Hunter Mason. I am the Active Transportation Counts Coordinator for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. We're trying to build a program to collect pedestrian and bicycle count data.
Great. Thank you for joining. Next, we have Charlene Mingus.
Hi, I'm the Active Transportation Planner for the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and we're working on developing a regional counts program and then working with Maryland DOT on their program.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Next, I believe, and the names are jumping around. I apologize if I end up missing a name here on the list. Charles Nelsony.
Hi, my name is Charles Neslony. I am with the Strategic Research Division of the Texas Department of Transportation, and I'm new to the group.
All right, well, thank you for being here. Next is Elizabeth Stoltz.
Hi, it's Liz Stoltz. I am the former chair of this committee and work for Marlin Engineering and provide consulting services to help build programs across the nation. My current project's with the Florida DOT. So
Great, thank you. Next, I believe, is James Starzyk.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was being called up. My name is James Starzyk. I'm the Alaska DOT liaison to our local MPO AMATs.
Great, well, thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to count the names, recite the names in alphabetical order, but they just keep jumping around. Sorry about that.
Yes, no problem, and well done on pronunciation.
Doing my best. All right. Next is Mark Bedard.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Bedard. I'm with Lindsay Transportation, and we get involved with a pedestrian and bicycle separated barrier for highway projects and bridge traffic. So I was just interested in the committee. This is my first time joining and first time taking part. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you for being here. Next, I believe, is Michael Pettish.
Hello, everyone. Michael Pettish, Pedestrian and Bicyclist Data Coordinator for Minnesota DOT. And I think this is my second meeting, so nice to be back.
Great, glad to have you back. All right. Next is Mike Lally.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Mike Lally with Replica. We're a relatively new company that we provide a data platform that focuses on mobility and economic activity. This is my first meeting here, and it's good to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to sit in and listen.
Of course, glad to have you. Next, I believe, is Olivia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Olivia, and I work with EcoCounter. And we've been coming to meetings for a few years. I believe we were there in person last year, and it's great to be here with you all now.
Great, glad to have you. Next is Peter S. Sorry, I just have.
It's all right. Hi, I'm Peter Schmiedeskamp, and I'm with Amazon Web Services, and I've worked as a bicycle and pedestrian planner, and I'm a PhD dropout researcher. And so I'm mostly here for my own edification, but if people need help with sharing data, I work on the open data team at AWS.
Great, glad to have you. Next, I believe, is Rupert Giroux.
Hello, this is Rupert Giroux from the Florida Department of Transportation, working in the safety office. I've spent some time working with our folks from Marlin Engineering and working with bike-ped data. And I'll toot my own horn. I'm a recently, by recent, I mean, it's just been a year. So it's recently minted PhD. And I used safety data and crash data as part of my research. So this is an area of high interest for me and my first time. So thank you for including me.
Great to have you, Rupert. All right, next is Rachel Panic.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I just joined in. What are we introducing ourselves?
Yes, sorry. We have a pretty small group today, so we were just giving a quick round of introductions. Sorry to throw you out there like that so quick.
No, I don't mind at all. I'm sorry that I missed the intro there. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Thompson Panic, and I am almost second year, about to be doing my first year PhD student at Georgia Tech, working with Dr. Carrie Watkins. So I'm very happy to be here.
Glad to have you as well. All right, next is Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah O'Brien. I'm the chair for this Bicycle and Pedestrian Data Subcommittee. And we've been working for a while now to try to connect people, network, and make sure that folks who are interested in bike-ped data, all forms of data, count data, travel behavior data, infrastructure data, anything related to bike-ped data, we can be a resource for you, as well as an opportunity to network with others. So I've heard a lot of folks, as they're introducing themselves, mention that this is their first time interacting with the committee or having information from us. So thank you and welcome to everybody. I did pop in the chat, and I'll put it in again later. If you would like to be added to our mailing list so that you can keep updated on the goings on of the committee and activities that you can be involved in, please do email me and we can add you to our MailChimp mailing list. That's the simplest way to stay in touch. And if you have any further questions on TRB and what we do, feel free to reach out and email me separately as well. We also do have a website, so you can browse that and look for more information if you're not familiar with our subcommittee. Thanks. Oh, and I should say, in my day job, I work for the Highway Safety Research Center at UNC, doing all kinds of things, bicycle and pedestrian transport, and actually not too much directly related to data anymore specifically.
All right, well, thank you, Sarah. We'll be sure to also provide any links throughout the webinar or the session. So be sure to use the chat pod if you have any questions. Please, more questions, the better. Next, we have Stephen Jesberger.
Hi, Nathan. Stephen Jesberger, Federal Highways Headquarters, Washington, D.C., and responsible for the travel modeling analysis system, where we receive any data, non-motorized data in the United States. If anybody wants to send it in, we'd welcome it. Also doing the National Bikeway Network, which is just now doing its final stages of prep work for that software, the brand new software, and also NatMac. Can't believe you didn't mention it, Sarah. I'm gonna mention NatMac. So anybody who wants to learn about,
I was holding that off for the end, but yeah,
oh, I'm
go
sorry.
for it.
Well, I'm going to mention it now. So natmac.org is where you can do. Registration is open. It's June and of this year. It's for a whole week, 21st to the 25th. We're excited about it coming up, and the early bird registration ends in just a few days. So please register. It's a very discounted rate, and it's a fantastic way to share. There will be a lot on Bike and Ped at NatMac. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Stephen. All right, next is Taylor Reich.
Oh, hello, everyone. Taylor Rich here, they, them pronouns. I am a researcher at the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, which is a global NGO advocating for sustainable and inclusive urban mobility, you know, especially in low and middle income cities, places like Mexico City or Jakarta, but we also are present in the United States with offices in Boston and Los Angeles. A lot of my work is in sort of benchmarking cities around the world in terms of walkability, cyclability, kind of using large scale open data to make comparisons and support advocates for active transportation in the cities where we work.
Great, thank you, Taylor. All right, next I believe is Tony Drollinger.
Hi, I'm Tony Drollinger. I work with Metro Transit in Minneapolis on bicycle access to transit issues, and this is also my first meeting, and I appreciate the chance to be here.
Great, glad to have you. Next, I believe is Tony Hall.
Hey, this is Tony Hall. I'm the other Tony in Minneapolis. Hi, Tony Drollinger. I am a freelance active transportation consultant here in Minneapolis, and I'm also one of the organizers of the Conversations with Colleagues series.
Great, thank you, Tony. And last but not least, I believe we have Yannick Fernandez. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody introducing themselves. It's great to know who all we are talking with today. If there's anybody that I missed, you can feel free to chime in right now and say hello.
Hi, Nathan. It's Krista Nordbeck.
Hi, Krista.
University of North Carolina Highway Safety Research Center. I get to work with Sarah, and I apologize that I was late and I will have to leave early. But I did want to put in one plug for our upcoming webinar on the 28th on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Data Clearinghouse. And the reason I'm plugging this in this group is that this clearinghouse was inspired by the early work of this subcommittee. So Liz Stoltz is on here. She was kind of leading up the committee back then and came up with this idea of having one place where we could find all the count data and then the crash data and other types of data. So we've tried to create that, and it's at pedbikedata.org if you want to check it out. And we're just about to roll out a new improvement on it. And it doesn't actually host any data, but it allows people to go and get to the data that are living all around the web currently on state and city and many municipality websites. So anyway, I invite you to join our webinar if you're interested on the 28th, and to find it, you can search for CSCRS webinar. And other exciting news, Caltrans is moving forward with the ped bike count program statewide. So very excited about that. Anyway, good to see you all. And I'll look forward to hearing more.
Great, thank you, Krista. We also, that was the information regarding the webinar was also included at the end of the slide. So we'll be able to also push the slides out so that way we can get the word out even more so. So appreciate that.
Hey, Nathan, this is Yanni Tsapakis. I'm with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. My apologies, maybe you said my name before, but I had issues with my microphones. I had to switch computers. So a few things about me. In the TRB world, I am the new chair of the ACP 70 Highway Traffic Monitoring Committee. So I'm extremely interested and excited to just sit here, listen all the nice things that Sarah and the whole crew are doing for the subcommittee, and try to find integration points with the parent committee and see how we can essentially help each other.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, looking at the time, I think we'll go ahead and move on to the next part of today. Greg, if you can skip to the next slide, please. There we go. That's perfect. Thank you. All right. So today's session, like I was saying, and for those who maybe joined late or this is their first time, like I've mentioned before, this is overall supposed to be a bit of an informal discussion. We don't have set presenters or hosts per se. We really just want to talk between one another, so that way, if there are questions, we can simply just discuss it between each other as peers. Today's session specifically, we're wanting to focus on the previous TRB annual meeting, whether there was any particular research that anybody attended, or if there was a particular session that they thought was interesting that they would like to discuss with the group. This would be a great time to do so. Or if there's any other research that they wanted to bring up, this would also be a good time to just put it out to the group, get other opinions. Oh, 1 second. Rachel, I think you're okay. If there's any other questions, or if there's any questions regarding specific research, I've just put a couple of sessions that I thought would be interesting to the group. So if there's any comments or questions, regarding the previous TRB meeting, if you have anything, go ahead and bring it up now. Did anyone get a chance to attend any of the sessions that are on the screen? What about the overall format? What did everyone think of the annual meeting itself, and it being essentially an online format? What did everyone think of that?
Hey, Nathan.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Stephen. The actual meetings were better attended, and I thought they went really well. Were very smooth, and I was quite pleased with them. I had difficulty reaching many of the vendors. I tried numerous times to go into the vendor area, and it just didn't work for me. A couple people did, like instead of the vendor area, they did like a webinar kind of thing where you go in there and you pop to another format, and that seemed to work for them. But the few that I went to didn't do that. So, yeah, I thought the committee meetings I was able to attend more of them, and the attendance at each one was a lot more people, which is good. So it got the word out really well.
That's great to hear.
Hey, this is Yanni. I totally agree with Stephen. I think the platform for the meetings and everything worked great. However, the platform and the tool that we had available for the various poster sessions, I find it personally, and I heard that from many people, to be a little bit not difficult to use, not super user-friendly. And I've heard from a lot of people that they ended up participating in many committee meetings, but they did not attend any poster sessions just because of the difficulty to use the platform and ask questions and things like that.
Okay.
And this is Charles. I attended several of those as well, and I like what he just said is that the committee meetings, you know, was able to get in there and listen in on it, but some of those other ones, I would go in and I would be the only person there, you know, and so it's kind of like, okay, now what? A little bit more interaction on some of those other meetings would have been nice.
That's good to know. So it sounds like there were some pros and cons between the various types of sessions that were going on.
Nathan, I think that's interesting. I mean, the opportunity to learn what technical and remote platforms worked well, and it's not surprising. The poster sessions really are a person-to-person thing. It's hard to imagine a way to really create that kind of atmosphere virtually. Not surprising. But then the meetings, it's great that they worked well, but I think as we move back to the in-person TRB, it'd be nice if there were a hybrid way to have people virtually there as well to boost attendance. But it's been my experience in the past that when there's an in-person meeting and there's the virtual audience is really sort of external to it because the meeting activity is there. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if TRB has made firm decisions on formats for 2022. I'm assuming they're probably leaning towards the in-person conference, but Sarah, do you know, has anybody else heard if there's updates for this year?
I have not. Yanni, have you heard anything?
No, I have not. Just rumors, but nothing official.
Not surprising, they're probably waiting to sort of as long as possible to see what the layout of the pandemic looks like.
I mean,
that makes sense.
HSRC is going to be hosting NatMec with the support from FHWA. We've definitely been monitoring other national conferences and kind of the trend of what's happening. To my understanding, the large majority of conferences in 2021 are still seem to be gearing towards primarily virtual. I think Walk Bike Places is actually the only one that I'm aware of that is, you know, directly driving a smaller but still important in-person component. So, but I will also say we took some of the lessons learned from our personal experiences with TRB's annual meeting, as well as other virtual meetings that people have been attending, to try to improve upon that for NatMec. So NatMec is going to be all virtual, as Stephen mentioned, in June. We are going to have a poster session. Actually, we have two separate poster sessions. And if you're familiar with using breakout rooms in Zoom, that's how we're going to be doing the poster sessions. So Zoom now has the capability for participants to actually choose which breakout room they want to go into. You don't necessarily have to be pre-assigned. And so each poster will have its own breakout room. And then you as an attendee can join that breakout room to have that one-on-one type of or smaller group discussion, Q&A, if you will, with the poster author. We're also going to have all the posters available online in a poster wall or a poster gallery on the website in advance. So attendees will be able to look at the posters, you know, go ahead and have their questions ready so that when that session opens, they can then meet with the authors that they want to meet with and chat. So I think, you know, we tried to take some of those lessons learned, things that didn't go quite as well with TRB, and we're trying to make them better. We're also doing that with the vendors or sponsors. NatMec, for those of you who don't know, you know, the expo is a big part of it, that E. And so trying to switch that to a virtual, you know, from an in-person where people bring a lot of the vendors would bring their equipment and their technology and sensors and all kinds of stuff to their booths, trying to set that up virtually. We definitely took some playbook ideas from TRB, but again, improved upon that. So one of the things that we're doing is we're offering a what we're calling the sponsor showcase, which is essentially a platform for the presenters, for the vendors to present on their particular project or demonstrate a particular product that they have, as well as some other sponsorship packages where they can get that information out and in front of the attendees. similarly, they will have a platform or a session for what we're calling I think we're calling it the Innovation Exchange. Basically, it's where vendors will have breakout rooms, and that's kind of like their virtual booths. One of the things that didn't seem to go very well with TRB was that it was very one-sided. There wasn't really that opportunity for communication and dialogue between the vendors and the folks who might be attending the virtual booths at TRB. And so with using Zoom and the informal platforms that we have with that, people will be able to go to a particular vendor's breakout room and talk, just like how we're talking now. So we're going to provide a lot of that capability for those interactions. So I highly encourage you, if you're not familiar with NatMech, definitely go look at the website and learn what the conference is all about. I do think with the virtual event that we're making it as good as it could possibly be without it being in person. So I think you're still going to find a lot of good stuff coming out of it. The other thing I'll mention, just while I'm talking about NatMech in general, we also pulled out some of the presentations that were gonna be on the docket last year. When we were thinking we were gonna have NatMech in person, we had to postpone that. Several of those webinars actually are bike ped related topics. And we will be archiving recordings of all of those. We've been partnering with ITE to bring the webinars as part of the series. And we've got the last one coming up in May. I'll check the date and put that into the chat pod. But that may be another resource if you haven't attended any of those webinars, to go back and look. And as we post the archived recordings, that'll be another great resource for everyone to check out.
Sarah, is the registration going to have a discount for the virtual NatMech, or is it the same?
We have deeply the registration fees because of the fact that it's not in person. There's no venue cost, there's no meal cost. So the registration rates are greatly discounted. We also are still offering an early bird registration that actually ends April 30th. So if you want to save even more money, register in the next couple of weeks. But even if you can't get it together and register by then, it's still such a deal. I mean, it's really a deal because you'll have access to all of the sessions. We are going to be recording the sessions and archiving them as well, so that the recordings will be available for a certain time period after the session. So if you're not able to attend a particular one because you've got some sort of conflict, you'll still be able to get to that information after the fact. So yeah, go check it out.
And I would just plug, and I think actually for all these virtual conferences with these reduced registrations and just our current situation, this is really a great opportunity for folks to think about conferences they might not usually attend. And NatMech, I think, is one of those. It's one that a lot of people don't know about. If you're a data person, it can be very interesting. It can also give you a little bit of a brain freeze after a few days, but it's a great opportunity to sort of explore and see what that's all about. I'll also plug for folks interested in the pedestrian side of things, the Walk 21 conference that's in Seoul, Korea this year is fully virtual, and it's actually going to be, they waive registration this year. So if you've not attended a Walk 21, that's the end of May. It's a great opportunity to see some of the international, there's a very data heavy component to Walk 21 generally. And I would say the warning is that the timing is actually Seoul time still. So it goes generally from about 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. So it's an all-nighter type session. But again, the benefit for those is when you register for something like that, you get access to all the recorded sessions. So you have that ability to go back and pick and choose and reference things you want. So I would strongly encourage folks to take advantage of some of these opportunities to explore new conferences.
That's a great point, Tony, and you're right. I'm sure there's a lot of conferences out there right now that this would be a great chance to get out there and just try them out. But thank you, Sarah. That's great to know about NatMech, and that you're able to take some of the lessons learned from TRB and improve upon them. So that's exciting. Out of curiosity, are there any other potential conferences or any particular webinars or anything like that that people would like to plug? Feel free. This is a great time to mention something if you know of a particular session or conference that might that you've been to in the past or that you might find useful. This is a good time to bring it up or plug it in the chat bot, either way.
As I'm going to have to leave early myself for a APBP task force meeting. I'd
Okay.
be remiss if I didn't mention the APBP conference this year will be virtual. They just had the close for paper, call for papers, and I am just checking my calendar to see so I can give you the date. It'll be, and it's a staggered conference like some of the other virtual. It'll be 3 Wednesdays from July 28th to August 11th. And I'll throw a link in the chat box for folks.
Great. And just for reference for everybody, and thank you, Tony, for that. Appreciate that. Just for reference, everyone, we'll put together a summary, essentially, of all these different webinars and sessions, and just basically send an email blast out to everybody who's signed up for the subcommittee list. So if you aren't signed up already yet, definitely go ahead and do so. I know there was a link in the chat that was put there earlier. So
Hey, tonight, this is Greg. I have a substantive topic question.
Sure.
Okay. One of the TRB sessions was on COVID-19 impacts. I was unable to attend that one, so I've not looked at that research, but I am on a team with a team of researchers here led by people from recreation and public health who've looked at specifically social distancing on trails and multi-use shared use paths or multi-use trails. Their research design was to demarcate an area and then track users or user groups through the area, look at encounters, and approximate whether or not they conform to the CDC guidance of 6-foot social distance. And they did this at a number of states across the country, and they came up with differing rates of conformance with that CDC guideline. For example, here in Minneapolis, they found that like about a third of the groups, the user groups, maintained social distancing at all times. Another 38% was never compliant, and the middle range was sometimes compliant. So in less than 40%, maybe 30, 35%, somewhere in there actually conform to that guideline. And the question that emerged then was, how do we translate that, which is a traffic count, a conformance of a behavior on a traffic count, to individual potential exposure to risk? Like when it could have been the same bodies, for example, depending, like in all of our counts, it could be people going and coming back. The recreation people are often interested in exposures per visit, but from a public health perspective, they want to translate that into number of unique individuals over time. And I'm curious whether or not any of our listeners today have wrestled with that sort of a problem and thought about how to convert our traffic counts to either user visits in a particular context or in the COVID-19 individual exposure to risk, given on rules of thumb for frequency of trips. I'm curious, one of our goals for those of you who are new is to sort of spark conversations that can occur offline. So I'd be curious if any of you others are working on a problem analogous to that one.
So Greg, we're not directly related to COVID, but somewhat similar as far as like the modeling question. You might remember ITRI had a project a few years ago looking at shared use paths and a couple studies, one that was looking at the economic impacts of shared use paths in North Carolina, but a precursor to that was specifically looking at a gap segment that was connected along the American Tobacco Trail in Durham and Wake County in North Carolina. And we did a series of counts. There are two permanently installed count stations along that trail. One in the northern section, which is a little bit more of an urban type location and travel pattern, and then one more on the southern section. And then we also did intercept surveys at several different places along the trail, both before and after the middle segment was installed. That middle segment, I forget how many miles it was. I want to say maybe like 1.5 miles or so of trail, but it also included a bridge going over I-40. And so it was a vital piece of between what essentially operated as two separate trails before that piece was installed. But the interest was we asked questions on the interface to try to get at the frequency of trail use, for individuals. And then we used the count data that we got not only at each station where we were doing the intercept surveys, but also at the continuous count locations to be able to extract data annually, as well as by trail segment based on where we set survey stations located. So we could get some information trying to understand, annual frequency, if you will, of a person using the trail based on how they answer to the intercept survey. So there may be some digging that could be done there to think about how that data could help imply an understanding of what you're asking about with overall exposure to risk with COVID.
Okay. That's really helpful, Sarah. I'll track that down. Thank you. Any other COVID studies that people are working on they'd like to share or get feedback on?
Well, hey, Greg, it's Stephen. It's not really a COVID study per se, but if anybody wants the data, that's what our shop's about, data, right? So we've been putting out a weekly report for over a year now, and it covers all 50 states and shows how things are trending. So it not only covers AADT, but it also covers single unit combination AADT. We've not done anything for bicycle and ped travel because we don't have that data inside TMS as much as we would like. So any agencies that have data, we would welcome it receiving it at Federal Highways. But there is a COVID, not related to bike and ped, but there is a COVID report that's out there if anybody wants it to benchmark against or check to see how things are tracking week to week for every state. Thanks.
There's one other item on COVID, I think, that Michael Pedish is on here. Michael is coordinating the MnDOT program. We've been looking at some of Michael's data and nothing's resolved yet. Nothing's finalized, yet, but we've identified that, that in large part the changes associated with COVID are oftentimes very specific to the location of a counter. So many of the shared use paths are up. There are some commute routes in cities where traffic is down. We hypothesize because fewer people are commuting along those routes. And then some places that are tourist destinations that typically are high, maybe a shared use path in a tourist destination hasn't grown as much as those in suburban areas. So there's interesting, in general, I think that most people's, it's pretty clear that bike and ped travel is up, but I don't think that occurs at every location. We're trying to look at some of those factors that account for these differentials. So it'd be interesting to see how they vary across the country, if any of you are working on those topics. Michael, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's it. Said it well.
I have a question just for anybody who may have seen the data regarding bike shares. Has anybody reviewed bike share usage or impacts over the last year and a half? I know in Miami, they shut down, I believe, the bike share and the the scooter companies. I actually don't know if they've even come back yet at this point. Just curious if anybody is seeing what impacts have occurred from COVID, perhaps on any of the bike share networks.
Sorry, Nathan, I've not seen that.
Okay, good to know. Okay.
There is, I can report on one other outcome at TRB. Bob Schneider put together a team that worked on estimating shared use path safety performance functions in Milwaukee and Minneapolis. And he used exposure data, count data at a number of locations. And I wanted to mention this because first, he demonstrates in the paper how these can be applied in a very practical way to look at relative risk associated with different types of crossings. But the main thing I wanted to underpoint for those people who are new is that, you know, when this committee was first started, that paper would have been impossible because the count data didn't exist. And I heard that many of you commented that you're with agencies that are contemplating or have recently started programs. And I think, as Krista knows, this was her dissertation, she's been a leader in this. One of the large motivations was to try to get to the point where we can begin to incorporate exposure into our crash models and other types of analyses. And I think the important thing that Bob showed is that with data, you know, we all think we understand theoretically it's exposure is one of the most important variables. Well, he certainly showed that they were significant. And so I think that was a paper that was recognized by the Bicycle Committee. But I think that that paper has benefited, I think, very much from the work that people who've been involved with this committee, because they're the ones who've established the programs to get at the exposure data. So if any of you are working on problems like that or are interested in those things, those are also topics we can discuss here. And if you have research that you think people would be interested in, go ahead and share it now. We want to foster conversation. Thank you, Nathan.
No, thank you, Greg. And of course, if you know of perhaps some research that is coming out soon or that is ongoing, it can always be a future topic. The hope is that we would have these sessions every 2 to 3 months, depending on how many topics we have. I know we've actually already had a few people email us regarding topics. So we'll begin, excuse me, we'll begin developing those further and providing more information out among the subcommittee emailing list for when the next session would be. But does anybody know perhaps of any research they are following at the moment? Thank you, Stephen. I see you've been putting a few links in the chat here. I appreciate that.
I get paid by the link, man.
Good to know. Greg, would you actually mind skipping to the next slide? One more. Oh, sorry, one more after that. There we go. Okay. Well, like I said, there's been a lot of information that has gone through the chat and gone through the session today. that we've discussed. I appreciate that, everybody. Just to mention, like we've discussed, there's a few other webinars that would be very useful to look into. The bicyclist.org Clearinghouse, they're having a session on April 28th from 2 to 3 p.m. There's a link there, which we'll be including in the email blast out to everybody. Also, the April webinar for APBP, I believe, is tomorrow. If you haven't already, and there's a webinar that you would like to plug, feel free to include it here in the chat. Or if there's any other sessions, thank you, Greg. If there's any other sessions or topics, something that you would like to discuss, whether it be research-based or something in regards to data, this session is meant to be informal, and we can simply go back and forth between these. If you see something regarding count data that you think is interesting in your area, it's always a great time to bring that up and discuss it. Our previous session back in October, when we discussed impacts from COVID, led to some interesting discussion. We will also be including a recording of today's session on the Bike and Ped Data Subcommittee website itself, as well as some other supporting information there. So if anybody has any other questions or anything else to discuss, now is the time. I do not have any other anything else to go through. If there's the floor is open for any last minute comments, questions, or concerns.
Hi, this is James Starzik.
Yes.
I just want to say, first off, thank you all for so much great information. This is my first meeting, and I'm having that drinking from the fire hose moment when I was like, wow, you guys are really laying it out there. So I really appreciate it. I've been taking copious notes and look forward to participating in the future. Just wanted to throw this out there because this is something that that I've been mulling over, and maybe you guys have already seen this and could point me in the right direction. One of the issues we have here in Alaska, and I'm sure everywhere else, is the issue with having the resources to do adequate bike and pedestrian counts. And a concept that's been floated around here was to engage our community councils. These are non-governmental community organizations that that are kind of the conduit between the community and their local elected representatives, to engage them to do bike and ped counts on a regular basis, ostensibly to to boost the data, but also in their own interest to be able to provide that information with projects that are being promoted in their area to show the bike ped demand. And I'm just curious as if anybody has had any experience doing public-led data collection like that, or organizing things like something on that in that vein.
Talk to Liz Stoltz.
Yeah, I think there's several of us that could maybe speak to that. I'll just speak very briefly. While you can do grassroots, if you want to, that, or some sort of thing where you're using a lot of volunteers to help manually count data, I think the trend is starting to move away from that and recognizing that if you really want a counts program, then you need to invest in it, and that means you need to get a sampling of continuous counters installed strategically, and then supplement that with periodic counts, just like how you would with a traffic monitoring program for motor vehicles. There are a lot of states that have either started a program or are getting ready to start a program, I would recommend that you look to Minnesota, Colorado, North Carolina, Florida, as far as state agencies, Virginia, that already have some form of account program for bike and ped, underway. They're all slightly different in their approach in how they do that. So there's a lot that can be, this is a conversation that just scratches the surface. And I would recommend that you reach out to the folks who are actually doing that work in some of these states to pick their brains a little bit more about what works for them, what hasn't worked for them, what lessons have they learned. My general sense is that every iteration of a state that learns from previous states' efforts wind up tweaking things a little bit or doing things slightly differently and improving upon. So there's no necessarily one right way to do it, but I would encourage you to try to advocate for a more standardized approach that you invest in, that is not reliant upon volunteers. If you're really talking about traffic monitoring. Now, if you're just talking about needing counts for a particular project, some very specific type of need, then maybe volunteers are great. But I think it really depends on what do you want to do with that count data? How do you want to use it? And is this something that you're trying to establish a foundation for long-term programming needs?
And Sarah, I would just add to that. This is Liz Stoltz. James, great question. I was up in Alaska in 2000, I want to say 14, and actually taught a bunch of DOT employees that also invited city and county folks around the Anchorage area. And a lot of people across the state drove in to talk about bicycle and pedestrian counting programs. So that's really old information. I don't know where it is today, but I would agree with Sarah. I would encourage you to go to the DOT and see where they are today. I will put my contact information in the chat pod if you want to contact me, so I can tell you who I worked with back then. So.
Great, good information. Thank you, Liz and Sarah. I'm in the planning department for Central Region here at the DOT, not in the highway data. So I'm certainly a little bit outside the loop, but I've seen I've seen a lot of interested local community organizations in data collection, specifically for the reason I cited to be able to better promote non-motorized facility development in certain neighborhoods. And they feel like they would get a leg up on the project nomination process if they had better count data. And this, the state is what it is as far as funding goes. There's not a whole lot of additional resources on the horizon, particularly for data collection. So
yeah, I think when North Carolina first started their counts program, they did use some of their planning funds. I don't know the details about that, but North Carolina's program was established through the bike and ped division. It was not established through the traditional traffic monitoring survey unit at DOT. And while they have conversations, it is still very much separate from the traffic monitoring program that's in CDOT. So that's something that I think many states maybe are still struggling with is, whether and if they will ultimately integrate and institutionalize the bike ped counts programs that seem to be, in my general kind of anecdotal looking at it, seem to always be started somehow outside of the traditional traffic monitoring group.
the first program ever.
Right.
And I want to add to that, because if funding is the issue, that is a non-issue. I can speak to starting the first statewide program in the nation without any funding and without any new staff. And it has to do with getting grants. It has to do with we have extra funds here, and we will use it or lose it in the traffic monitoring group. So Sarah's right. Typically, these programs are not started in the traffic monitoring world where the motorized traffic program already exists, where you already have trained staff that know how to use and collect data and set up equipment. So it's a lot different now, but I can tell you that money should not be the issue. And you can contact me for those ideas, so I can give you a whole lot more.
Great, thank you. I will definitely take you up on that.
All right, well, thank you, Sarah and Liz, for that. There's a lot of great information there for you, James. And for everybody else, we are at 3:30. We will continue to go on here if we have any more questions, but I do appreciate everybody joining today. Some really great questions, some great discussion for today's session. Look to, again, the email, the subcommittee emailing list. Please join that if you haven't already, to get news and information coming out. The next session I believe we're going to aim for is the end of June. I do not see any other questions in the chat pod at this moment, so I think we will go ahead and end today's session. I appreciate everybody joining today. Thank you very much. All right, you all have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.